Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to break down a really powerful mind training framework from the one and only Tony Robbins. He calls it the ultimate success formula, and honestly, it's a method designed to get you outstanding results again and again in pretty much any area of your life.
So here's the big idea, right? Success, it isn't some random lottery ticket or just dumb luck. It's a skill you can train. It's a pattern, a specific way of thinking and acting that anyone, and I mean anyone, can learn and use to go after their goals.
All right, so here's our game plan for unpacking this whole thing. First, we'll lay out the 5 core steps. Then, we're going to dive into each one. And to wrap it all up, we'll see how it all comes together in an absolutely incredible real-world success story. Okay, so what is this universal pattern for getting what you want? What are the fundamental rules that govern success, whether you're, building a company or trying to improve a relationship? Well, it all boils down to these 5 simple but really profound steps. If you can get these right, you create this incredibly powerful engine for achievement. So let's break down that very first one, knowing your outcome.
This first step, honestly, it's the bedrock for everything else, and it's all about focus. As Tony says, it's pretty hard to hit a target you can't even see, but most people are walking around without a clearly defined target for their lives.
Think about it. The clearer you are, the more precise and vivid you are about what you truly want, the more power you have to actually make it happen. You're basically giving your brain a direct command, a specific target to lock onto.
This is the perfect example of how this works. You know that weird thing that happens? You buy a new car, and bam, suddenly you see that exact same car everywhere. Those cars were always on the road, but you just never noticed them before. The second you decided that car was important to you, your brain started pointing them out. This isn't magic, it's neuroscience.
And what's so cool is that there's actual science behind this. It's called your reticular activating system, or RAS for short. You can think of it like a bouncer for your mind. When you define a super clear outcome, you're literally programming your brain's bouncer to filter out all the noise and only let in the information that's relevant to hitting your goal.
Okay, so let's move on to the next 2 steps, because having a target is awesome, but it's not enough, right? You need the fuel to get you there and the engine to actually start moving. Knowing your outcome, the what, is absolutely critical. But knowing your purpose, your why, that's your rocket fuel. That's what gives you that unstoppable drive. A big enough why will help you figure out almost any how. So, you've got your what, you've got your why, now what? Well, you got to get in the game. And we're not talking about just dipping your toe in the water. The formula calls for taking massive, committed action. This isn't about just being busy. It's about making big, purposeful moves toward that thing you want. Taking action is great, but it's only half the battle. If you just keep running east looking for the sunset, all the massive action in the world isn't going to help you. You have to pay attention to the results you're getting. This is where something Tony calls sensory acuity comes in. And really, all that means is you got to be smart enough and honest enough to see if what you're doing is actually working. Are you getting closer to your goal or further away? You have to see reality for what it is, not just what you hope it is. This right here, this is a perfect way to think about it. An Inuit person has dozens of different words for snow. A Californian probably has 1. Now, who do you think has more power in a blizzard? The Inuit, of course, because they see more. They can see the difference between snow you can build with and snow that's dangerous. The more you can see in your own world, the better you can adapt. The answer, obviously, is as long as it takes. And that brings us to the final step. If what you're doing isn't working, you have to be flexible enough to change it up. A baby doesn't try to stand, fall down once, and then just quit walking for life, right? No, they keep trying, they adjust, they try something different, and they keep changing their approach until they get the result. All right, now let's put this all together and see how this formula works in the real world with one of the most incredible, most famous success stories you'll ever hear. This is more than just a story. It's a perfect case study. So Stallone had step 1 and 2 totally locked down. He had a crystal clear outcome. He wanted to be in the movie business, and he had this incredibly powerful purpose driving him. He wanted to inspire people by showing them you could overcome impossible odds. And that powerful why fueled him to take massive, almost unbelievable action. We're talking over 1,500 rejections from casting agents in New York. People told him he looked funny, he talked funny, and he would never, ever be a star. But he kept going. I mean, he hit the absolute bottom. So broke he couldn't afford food or heat. He was forced to do something unthinkable. He stood outside a liquor store and sold his best friend, his dog,
to a stranger for just 25 bucks.
And then came step 4 and 5. The feedback from the world was clear. His current approach wasn't working. So he changed it. He got flexible. After seeing a boxing match, he got this incredible idea, and he channeled all that hunger and desperation and wrote the entire script for Rocky in one 20-hour marathon.
Producers loved the script. They eventually offered him over $300,000 for it, which for him at the time was a fortune. But here's the catch. They didn't want him to star in it. And he said no. He turned down life-changing money because he never lost sight of his real outcome, which was to be Rocky.
They finally made a deal. He got way less money, but he got the part. And what's the very first thing he did with that money? He went right back to that liquor store and waited for 3 days to find the man who bought his dog. He ended up having to pay the guy $15,000 to get his best friend back. Just think about that.
Look at this. His story is literally the 5 steps in action. He knew his outcome with absolute clarity. He had a powerful purpose. He took massive, relentless action. He paid attention to the feedback, what wasn't working, and he was flexible enough to change his approach until he finally won. It's the whole formula.
So look, this isn't just a cool story about a movie star. It's a roadmap. You have the exact same formula right now that you can use to train your mind and direct your focus. So the only real question left is, what's the one outcome you're going to define for yourself today?